The candlelight was merciless. It found every thread of gold woven through the amber silk, every crystal bead catching fire along the bodice, every inch of exposed collarbone that Seren Ashford had spent the last 20 minutes wishing she could cover. The gown was extraordinary. The gown was a disaster. The gown was absolutely catastrophically not hers. She pressed her back against a marble column and tried to disappear. It wasn't working. Across the Hatherley Ballroom, 300 of London's finest moved through the steps of a quadrille, their jewels glittering and their laughter rising like champagne bubbles toward the frescoed ceiling. Seren watched them with the desperate attention of a woman memorizing escape routes. The terrace doors were 30 feet to her left. The main entrance was blocked by a receiving line that had not thinned in an hour. The servants' corridor was somewhere behind the refreshment tables, but reaching it would require crossing the entire length of the room. In this dress, she would not make it 10 feet unnoticed. "You look like a fox who has wandered into a hunt," said a voice beside her. Seren inhaled sharply. She turned to find a young woman in pale rose silk, watching her with unconcealed curiosity. Dark hair, bright eyes, a smile that suggested she found Seren's discomfort genuinely entertaining. "I beg your pardon?" Seren managed. "A fox," the woman repeated cheerfully. Beautiful, out of place, and acutely aware that everyone in the room would like to chase her down. "I'm Marin Vane, and you are quite clearly not Lady Pemberton's companion." The name landed like a stone in Serene's stomach. Lady Pemberton. The elderly widow who had hired her for this evening. The woman who had promised to meet her at the entrance, make proper introductions, ensure Seren was presented correctly to society. The crowd parted like water before a ship's prow, and Seren understood instantly why. The man crossing the ballroom moved with the unconscious authority of someone who had never been denied anything in his life. He was tall, dark-haired, dressed in evening black that made his shoulders look impossibly broad. His face might have been carved from the same marble as the columns. Handsome in the way of old paintings, severe in a way that suggested smiling was something other people did. His eyes found Serene's across 20 feet of polished floor. He did not look away. "Too late," Marin muttered. "Damnation." The Duke of Ashworth, because that was clearly who he was. That was the only explanation for the way servants scrambled from his path and matrons clutched their fans, stopped directly before them. His gaze moved over Seren slowly, deliberately, cataloging every detail of the amber gown with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Who dressed you tonight?" he asked. It was not a compliment. His voice was low, precise, edged with something Seren could not identify. Suspicion, perhaps. Or recognition. Or both. "Your Grace." Marin stepped forward, positioning herself slightly between them. "This is Miss Seren Ashford. She's a friend from—" "I asked her a question, Marin." The words were quiet, but they silenced his sister instantly. Seren lifted her chin, refusing to cower beneath his assessment. She had spent her entire life being looked down upon by people who believed birth determined worth. She would not start flinching now. "A solicitor named Phineas Locke provided this dress," she said evenly. "I was told it was a gift from my employer, Lady Pemberton. I've since learned that Lady Pemberton is deceased, and Mr. Locke's intentions were apparently not what they seemed." Something flickered in the Duke's blue eyes. "You know Locke. I met him once, briefly. He arranged my employment. Employment." The word dripped with skepticism. "As a companion, Your Grace. A respectable position for a woman of limited means." Seren felt heat climbing her neck, but kept her voice steady. "I apologize if my presence offends you. I'll leave immediately if you'll point me toward the nearest exit that doesn't require crossing the entire room." The Duke did not move. His eyes remained fixed on her face, with an intensity that should have been rude, but somehow felt like being pinned by a collector examining a rare specimen. "That dress," he said finally, was designed by Madame Fontaine. She takes commissions from exactly 12 families in England. Mine is one of them. So I will ask again, Miss Ashford. Who dressed you tonight and why? The question cracked something open in Serene's composure. She had no answer. She had been manipulated, abandoned, thrust into a situation she did not understand. And now, a duke was demanding explanations she could not provide. I don't know, she admitted, her voice smaller than she wanted. I truly don't know. The admission seemed to surprise him. He studied her for a long moment, his expression impossible to read. Then, without warning, he took her arm. Walk with me. What? Unless you prefer to stand here while the Countess of Whitmore and her daughters descend upon you like carrion birds. They've been watching you for the past 15 minutes, and I assure you, their intentions are not friendly. Serene glanced toward the refreshment tables and found 3 women in matching shades of violet, staring at her with undisguised hostility. The eldest held an opera glass. She let the Duke lead her away. He steered her through the crowd with practiced efficiency, acknowledging greetings with curt nods, but not stopping to converse. His hand at her elbow was firm, proprietary, sending an entirely different message to everyone who watched them pass. You're creating a scandal, Serene murmured. I'm creating a mystery. There's a difference. Is there? Scandal is messy and destructive. Mystery is useful. He guided her through a set of French doors onto a lamp-lit terrace. The night air was cool against Serene's flushed skin, carrying the scent of roses from the garden below. Mystery makes people pay attention. And right now, Miss Ashford, I need people paying attention to you. Serene pulled her arm free, turning to face him. I don't understand. No, I don't imagine you do. The Duke moved to the stone balustrade, his back to the ballroom's golden glow, until I discovered he was conducting schemes on the side using my name and resources. I've been trying to understand the full scope of his activities. Tonight, it seems, you've provided a valuable piece of that puzzle. I'm glad my humiliation serves a purpose. Something that might have been respect flickered across his face. You're angry. Good. You should be. But your anger won't help you survive the next hour. I don't need to survive anything. I need to leave. And go where? His question was soft, almost gentle. Back to your modest home, wherever that is. Back to waiting for another opportunity that may never come. Back to your brother and his endless schemes with men like Phineas Locke. Serene's hands trembled. She pressed them flat against the amber silk. You know nothing about my brother. I know Locke chose you deliberately. I know that dress was selected to catch my attention. I know someone wanted you in this ballroom tonight, dressed like a duchess, with no sponsor and no protection. The Duke stepped closer, his voice dropping. The question is why? And until we answer that question, leaving would be a mistake. We? Miss Ashford. He seemed to be choosing his words with unusual care. I find myself in need of someone exactly like you, someone unknown to society, someone intelligent enough to navigate complex situations, someone who has nothing to lose and everything to gain. Serene's pulse quickened dangerously. What exactly are you proposing? A partnership, temporary, mutually beneficial, and beginning immediately. His gaze locked with hers. There is a woman inside that ballroom who believes she will become my wife within the month. My grandmother has arranged it. Society expects it. And I would rather marry a lamppost. Despite everything, Serene felt her lips twitch. A lamppost. They're quiet, undemanding, and never attempt to redecorate. Your Grace, Lady Venetia Harcourt is suitable in every way that matters to the ton. She's beautiful, wealthy, and well-connected. She's also vapid, calculating, and looks at me like I'm a prize horse she intends to acquire for her collection. A muscle flexed in his cheek. I cannot simply refuse her. My grandmother has too much influence, Too many allies. What I need is an alternative, a reason to delay, a complication that makes the match impossible to finalize until I can find a permanent solution. Seren stared at him. You want me to be your complication? I want you to be my guest at Ashworth House for the remainder of the season. You'll be presented as Marin's friend from the country, someone my sister befriended during her travels. We'll attend events together, dance at balls, create the appearance of a courtship compelling enough to give my grandmother pause. That's madness. That's strategy. It's lying to everyone you know. It's survival. His voice hardened. For both of us. You think Locke set you up out of kindness? Whatever his game is, you're a piece in it. Without my protection, you'll be devoured by morning. Society doesn't forgive unknown women who appear at balls in couture gowns without explanation. They'll assume the worst about you, and they'll make sure everyone else assumes it too. Ice flooded her veins. She thought of her mother at home, waiting for news of her new position. Her father, still fragile from the failure that had broken him 3 years ago. Theo, who had only wanted to help. If scandal touched her tonight, it would destroy them all. What would I receive in return? She heard herself ask. The Duke's expression sharpened. Name your terms. My family cannot know the truth. I want letters sent to my mother explaining I've accepted a position as Lady Marin's companion for the season. Nothing about arrangements or courtships, just respectable employment. Done. When this ends, I want introductions, references, actual connections that will help me secure a real position with a real family. Also done. And if you decide to actually marry anyone, whether Lady Venetia or some other woman, this ends immediately. I won't be made to look like a discarded mistress while you conduct a genuine courtship. Something changed in his face. Not quite a smile, but close. You negotiate like a merchant. My father was a merchant, before he lost everything. Then he taught you well. The Duke extended his hand. Do we have an agreement, Miss Ashford? Seren looked at his outstretched palm, long fingers, a signet ring glinting in the lamplight, the casual confidence of a man who had never been refused. She should say no. Every sensible instinct screamed at her to walk away, to take her chances with society's judgment, rather than entangle herself with a duke and his schemes. But when had being sensible ever gotten her anywhere? She took his hand. We have an agreement. His grip was warm, firm, and brief. Then let's begin. We have approximately 3 minutes before Lady Venetia comes looking for me, and I want her to see us returning together. That's petty. That's tactics. He offered his arm with perfect formality. Welcome to the war, Miss Ashford. As they stepped back through the French doors into the golden blaze of the ballroom, Seren caught her reflection in a darkened window. Amber silk. Crystal beads. A woman she did not recognize. Marin intercepted them immediately, her face alight with curiosity. Well, what's happening? Why do you both look like you're plotting something? Because we are, the Duke said mildly. Miss Ashford will be joining us at Ashworth House. She's your new dearest friend from the country. Marin's eyebrows shot toward her hairline. Is she? Since when? Since approximately 4 minutes ago. I trust you can manage the details. Catus, the Countess of Whitmore is approaching. Smile, both of you. And then they were surrounded. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of introductions, carefully worded lies, and pointed questions that Seren fielded with growing desperation. No, she had never been to London before. Yes, she had known Lady Marin for quite some time. Their correspondence had been extensive. The dress? A gift from her late aunt. How tragic, the circumstances. How fortunate this visit. Through it all, the Duke remained at her side, a silent sentinel whose presence somehow made every lie more believable. When Lady Venetia finally appeared, blonde, beautiful, dripping in sapphires, his hand moved to the small of Seren's back. Your Grace, Lady Venetia's smile did not reach her eyes. I didn't realize you'd brought a guest this evening. Lady Marin's guest, the Duke corrected smoothly, though I confess Miss Ashford has quite captured my attention. The words landed like a slap. Serene felt Lady Venetia's gaze turn glacial, felt the temperature drop despite the warmth of 300 bodies. How delightful, Lady Venetia said. I look forward to becoming better acquainted. She swept away before anyone could respond. That, Marin whispered, was a declaration of war. Excellent. The Duke's voice was perfectly calm. Then we've accomplished exactly what we needed to. The carriage ride to Ashworth House was silent save for the rattle of wheels on cobblestones. Serene sat across from the vain siblings, trying to process the enormity of what she'd agreed to. Marin watched her with sympathetic curiosity. The Duke stared out the window, his expression giving nothing away. You'll need everything, Marin said finally. Dresses, gloves, accessories. We'll summon Madame Fontaine tomorrow. I can't afford— You're not paying. The Duke spoke without turning from the window. Consider it an investment in the credibility of our arrangement. I don't want charity. Then consider it a costume. You're playing a role, Miss Ashford. You need the wardrobe. Serene bit back her retort. He wasn't wrong, and arguing would only underscore how far out of her depth she truly was. Ashworth House rose from the darkness like something out of a fever dream. Pale stone, endless windows, columns that spoke of wealth so old it had forgotten how to be anything else. Servants appeared the moment the carriage stopped, opening doors, offering hands, moving with choreographed precision. The Rose Guest Suite, the Duke told a severe-looking woman in black. Miss Ashford will require a lady's maid as well. Of course, Your Grace. Inside, the house was overwhelming. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, ancestral portraits watching from the walls with cold disapproval. Serene felt like a counterfeit coin dropped into a treasury. Tomorrow, the Duke said as a maid appeared to lead her upstairs. You'll meet my grandmother. She'll have heard about tonight by then. She'll want to assess you. Assess me. She assesses everyone. It's how she maintains control. He paused, something flickering behind his careful mask. Don't let her intimidate you, Miss Ashford. You've survived worse than one old woman's scrutiny. You don't know what I've survived. No. His eyes held hers for a moment that stretched too long. But I intend to find out. The maid led her away before Serene could respond. The Rose Guest Suite was larger than her family's entire house. She stood in the center of the bedroom, turning slowly, taking in the four-poster bed with its silk hangings, the writing desk by the window, the fireplace already crackling with warmth. This was where she would live, while pretending to be courted by a duke. The absurdity of it hit her all at once. But tonight, in this beautiful room that wasn't hers, wearing borrowed silk against borrowed sheets, she allowed herself one moment of honesty. She was terrified. And somewhere deep beneath the fear, in a place she didn't dare examine too closely, something else stirred. The Duke had looked at her like she mattered. No one had looked at her like that in a very long time. She pushed the thought away, rolled onto her side, and waited for morning to come. It would arrive too soon. Morning came with ruthless efficiency. Serene woke to pale sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize, her body momentarily convinced she was still at home in the narrow bed she'd slept in since childhood. Then memory crashed over her. The ballroom, the dress, the Duke's cold blue eyes asking who dressed you tonight, and she sat up so quickly her head spun. Nell was already moving about the room, laying out a morning dress of soft sage green that Serene had certainly never seen before. Lady Marin sent it up first thing, Nell explained, catching her confusion. Said you'd need something proper to wear until your wardrobe arrives. She's already summoned Madame Fontaine for this afternoon. How early is it? Just past 8, miss. The family takes breakfast at 9, but I thought you might want time to prepare. Time to prepare. as if any amount of time could prepare her for what lay ahead. Serene allowed Nell to help her dress, grateful for the maid's quiet competence. The sage dress fit surprisingly well. Maren must have guessed at her measurements with impressive accuracy. When she caught her reflection in the mirror, she saw a stranger. Hair neatly arranged, skin pale but composed, wearing clothes that actually suited her instead of faded hand-me-downs. The woman in the mirror looked like she belonged. The illusion would shatter the moment she opened her mouth. Breakfast was served in a sunny morning room overlooking formal gardens. Maren was already there, attacking a plate of pastries with enthusiasm that seemed characteristic. "You look human again," she announced as Serene entered. "Last night you looked like you might shatter at any moment. Sit, eat. The scones are exceptional, and cook gets offended if they go untouched." Serene sat, allowing a footman to pour her tea. "Where is?" Caius takes breakfast at 6, then disappears into his study. He'll emerge for important meetings and mandatory social obligations, but otherwise exists primarily among his ledgers. Maren waved a hand dismissively. He's been worse since father died. Buries himself in work so he doesn't have to think about anything else. "Your father? When did he?" 8 months ago, suddenly, an illness no one expected. Maren's brightness dimmed momentarily. Caius was in Scotland on estate business. He didn't make it back in time. The words landed with weight. Serene thought of her own father, diminished, but still present, still breathing. "I'm sorry." "Everyone is sorry. It doesn't change anything." Maren's smile returned, but it was thinner than before. "What changes things is moving forward, which brings us to the matter at hand. You need to be prepared for grandmother." The Duke mentioned she would want to assess me. That's putting it mildly. The Dowager Duchess of Ashworth views assessment as an art form. She'll know everything about you within 5 minutes. Your background, your family's circumstances, exactly how unsuitable you are for her grandson. Maren leaned forward. The trick is not to pretend otherwise. She hates deception. What she respects is spine. Spine. Stand your ground. Be honest. Don't grovel. Maren's eyes sparkled. "I have complete faith in you. By the way, anyone who negotiates with Caius the way you apparently did has more than enough spine." "He told you about that?" "He told me you set conditions, 3 of them. My brother doesn't negotiate with anyone. The fact that he accepted your terms means you impressed him." Serene reached for a scone, buying time to process this information. The Duke, Caius, had been impressed? The thought warmed something in her chest that she immediately tried to smother. At precisely 10 o'clock, a footman appeared at the door. "The Dowager Duchess will receive Miss Ashford in the blue drawing room." Serene set down her teacup with careful control. Maren squeezed her hand. "Remember, spine." The blue drawing room lived up to its name. Silk wallpaper the color of a winter sky, delicate furniture arranged with military precision, curtains that probably cost more than everything Serene's family owned combined. But Serene barely noticed the decor. The Dowager Duchess commanded every atom of attention in the room simply by existing. She was not what Serene expected. Where the Duke was dark, she was silver. Hair swept up in an elaborate arrangement. Eyes the same piercing blue as her grandson's, dressed in dove gray that somehow conveyed both mourning and authority. She sat in a high-backed chair near the window, like a queen on her throne, and when her gaze fell on Serene, it felt like being examined under glass. The Dowager's eyebrows rose fractionally, the first genuine reaction she'd shown. "He told you that?" "He compared her to a lamppost, Your Grace. Rather, unfavorably." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, impossibly, the Dowager laughed. It transformed her face, stripping away decades of careful composure to reveal the woman underneath. Someone who had once been young, who had once been capable of joy. "A lamppost." She shook her head slowly. "He has his father's gift, for the precisely devastating phrase. Seren waited, uncertain whether she had passed some invisible test or failed it entirely. The dowager's laughter faded, replaced by something more complicated. My son died 8 months ago. My grandson inherited a title he wasn't prepared for, responsibilities that keep him buried in that study of his, and a grief he refuses to acknowledge. I want him to marry because I want him to live, to have something beyond duty and ledgers and the weight of everything his father left behind. Lady Venetia won't give him that. No. The admission seemed to cost something. She won't. But she was a sensible choice, and Caius has never shown interest in anyone sensible or otherwise. Until last night. The air left Seren's lungs. Your Grace. He looked at you across that ballroom, like you were the first real thing he'd seen in months. My spies were quite detailed in their reports. The dowager leaned forward. I don't know what your game is, Miss Ashford. Perhaps there isn't one. Perhaps you're exactly what you appear, an unfortunate young woman caught in someone else's schemes. But I am going to tell you this once, and you would do well to remember it. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. If you hurt him, if you manipulate his grief, exploit his vulnerability, or break whatever small piece of himself he's actually allowing you to see, I will destroy you. Not metaphorically, not socially. I will reach into whatever remains of your life and crush it completely. The words should have been theatrical. Instead, they were terrifying because they were clearly, absolutely true. I understand, Seren said quietly. But with respect, Your Grace, I have no intention of hurting anyone. I'm trying to survive. That's all I've ever done. The dowager studied her for a long moment. Then she rose, signaling the end of the interview. We shall see what you're capable of, Miss Ashford. The Aldridge dinner is Thursday evening. You'll attend with the family. She moved toward the door, then paused. That dress you wore last night. Where is it now? In my room, I believe. I haven't... Burn it. The dowager's voice was flat. Whatever Phineas Locke intended by giving it to you, the dress served its purpose. Now it needs to disappear. If anyone asks, it was borrowed from an aunt and returned the following morning. Yes, Your Grace. The dowager nodded once and swept from the room, leaving Seren alone with her racing thoughts and the unsettling realization that she'd just received both a warning and something very close to permission. She found Marin waiting in the hallway, practically vibrating with curiosity. Well, what happened? You're still alive, which is promising. She threatened to destroy me if I hurt your brother. Oh, excellent. That means she likes you. That's a peculiar definition of liking someone. Grandmother only threatens people she takes seriously. Marin linked arms with her, steering her toward the staircase. Now come on. Madame Fontaine arrives at 2, and we need to discuss strategy before she gets here. They settled in Marin's sitting room, a bright, cluttered space overflowing with books, half-finished embroidery, and several suspicious-looking sketches that Seren deliberately avoided examining. You need everything, Marin said, producing a list that appeared to have been created sometime before dawn. Morning dresses, walking dresses, afternoon gowns, riding habits. Do you ride? I haven't in years. We'll add lessons. Evening gowns, obviously. At least 4 ball gowns. Accessories, shoes, gloves. This is too much. This is the minimum. Marin's voice softened. I know it feels excessive, but appearing in society without proper wardrobe is like appearing on a battlefield without armor. They'll tear you apart. Your brother said something similar, about society being cruel. Caius understands cruelty better than most. Marin's expression clouded. After Mother died, Grandmother tried to shape him into exactly what she wanted. The perfect heir, the perfect Duke-in-waiting. Father intervened when he could, but Father was also grieving, and Caius learned early to lock everything away. He seems very controlled. Controlled is one word for it. Marin's eyes met hers. He hasn't let anyone close since father died. Not me, not grandmother, not his friends. He works endlessly, attends events with perfect courtesy, and never, ever shows what he's actually feeling. Why are you telling me this? Because last night, when he looked at you, something cracked. Marin's voice was quiet. I haven't seen my brother's mask slip in 8 months. And then you appeared in that ridiculous dress, looking terrified and defiant and completely out of place. And suddenly he was present. Actually there, for the first time since we buried father. Serene didn't know what to say. The weight of Marin's words pressed against her chest. I'm not trying to make you feel responsible, Marin continued. Whatever happens between you and Caius, that's between you. But I wanted you to understand what you're dealing with. He's not cold because he doesn't care. He's cold because caring nearly destroyed him. A knock at the door interrupted them. A footman announced that Madame Fontaine had arrived early. Marin's serious expression transformed instantly into delight. Perfect timing. Let's go make you magnificent. 3 hours later, Serene stood on a small platform, while Madame Fontaine circled her like a shark scenting blood. The woman was terrifying, French, imperious, and possessed of opinions so strong they could probably be measured in force. She retreated to the library, a sanctuary she'd discovered during the afternoon's chaos, and sank into one of the leather chairs near the fire. The books surrounded her like old friends, their spines promising escape into worlds where she understood the rules. You survived. She startled at the Duke's voice. He stood in the doorway, still in his riding clothes, dust on his boots, his dark hair slightly disordered. He looked less polished than he had the night before, and somehow more human. I survived Madame Fontaine, if that's what you mean. I meant my grandmother. But Fontaine is also formidable. He entered the room, moving to the sideboard to pour himself a drink. Would you like something? Sherry? Wine? Tea, if there's any. Always. He rang for a servant, giving instructions quietly before settling into the chair across from her. Grandmother informed me that she threatened to destroy you. She mentioned something along those lines, and yet you're still here. Your sister tells me that threats of destruction are a sign of affection in your family. Something flickered across his face. Amusement, perhaps, or surprise. Marin has a unique perspective. She also told me that your mask slipped last night. Serene met his eyes, refusing to retreat from the subject. That you've been closed off since your father died, and something changed when you saw me at the ball. The Duke's expression shuddered instantly. Marin talks too much. She loves you. She's worried about you. She doesn't need to worry, doesn't she? Serene leaned forward slightly. Your Grace. Caius, we have an arrangement, a business transaction as you called it. But if that arrangement is going to work, we need to be honest with each other. I told your grandmother the truth about my circumstances because she asked directly, and lying to her seemed pointless. I'm extending you the same courtesy. If there's something I need to know about you, about what you actually want from this, tell me now. The room went quiet, weighted with tension, something that felt like the beginning of a story neither of them had expected to tell. The first week passed in a blur of transformations. Madame Fontaine's creations arrived in waves, morning dresses and walking gowns, evening wear and riding habits, more beautiful clothing than Serene had seen in her entire life. Marin supervised the unpacking with proprietary enthusiasm, organizing and critiquing, and occasionally bursting into spontaneous applause. This one, she declared, holding up an evening gown of deep copper silk, is going to cause a riot at the Aldridge dinner. Lady Venetia will expire on the spot. I don't want to cause a riot. Nonsense. Riots are excellent for reputation. Nothing says arrived like making every woman in the room jealous and every man forget what they were saying. Serene ran her fingers along the copper silk. It was softer than anything she'd ever worn, cut in lines that would somehow make her look taller, more commanding, more like someone who belonged in this world. "It feels like armor," she admitted. "It is armor." Marin's voice was uncharacteristically serious. "Beautiful armor that will make them underestimate you until it's too late to realize their mistake." The Aldridge dinner arrived before Seren felt remotely prepared. She descended the main staircase in the copper gown, her pulse racing beneath her composed exterior, and found Caius waiting in the entrance hall. He turned at the sound of her footsteps, and something in his expression made her breathing still. "Miss Ashford." His voice was perfectly controlled, but his eyes traveled over her like she was something precious and dangerous all at once. "You look adequate," she offered, unable to keep the tremor from her voice. "Extraordinary." The word came out rough, almost reluctant, as if he hadn't meant to say it aloud. Marin swept past them with a knowing smile. "If you two are quite finished, the carriage is waiting." The Aldridge townhouse was smaller than Ashworth House, but no less intimidating, packed with precisely the sort of people who had whispered about her behind fans at the ball. She felt their gazes the moment she entered, felt the whispers beginning like wind stirring through leaves. Caius's hand found the small of her back, steady and warm. "Remember," he murmured, "you belong here." "I don't." "Then pretend until you do. Eventually, the pretense becomes truth." The dinner itself was an elaborate performance. 12 courses, intricate table placement, conversation that circled and struck like predators testing prey. Seren found herself seated between an elderly viscount who talked only of his hunting dogs and a young lord whose attempts at flirtation were so clumsy she almost felt sorry for him. But her attention kept drifting to Caius, seated too far away for conversation, engaged in what appeared to be a tortuous exchange with Lady Venetia. The woman was beautiful. Seren couldn't deny that. Golden hair, porcelain skin, sapphires that caught the candlelight like trapped stars. She leaned toward Caius with practiced intimacy, laughing at something he hadn't actually said, touching his arm in ways that made possessiveness clear to everyone watching. Serene's fork tightened against her plate. "She's insufferable, isn't she?" The voice came from across the table, a young woman in sage green, with clever eyes and a conspiratorial smile. "Lady Venetia, I mean. Watching her hunt down Ashworth has been the entertainment of the season." "I don't know her well enough to judge. You don't need to. She's performed this routine with 3 dukes and an earl over the past 4 years. Always positions herself as the obvious choice. Always makes sure the grandmothers adore her. Always claims the first waltz before anyone else can approach." The woman extended her hand across the table. "Temperance Birchwood. I make it my business to know things." Seren accepted the handshake, intrigued despite herself. "Serene Ashford." "Oh, I know exactly who you are. The mysterious woman who appeared at the ball in the amber gown, captured Ashworth's attention so thoroughly he actually forgot to be cold, and somehow managed to survive a private audience with the Dowager Duchess." Temperance's smile widened. "You're the most interesting thing to happen this season." "That wasn't my intention. The best things never are." Temperance glanced toward Lady Venetia. "A word of warning, if you'll accept it from a stranger. Venetia Harcourt doesn't lose gracefully. She's been planning to become Duchess of Ashworth since she was 16. Anyone who threatens that plan becomes her enemy." "I'm not threatening anything. This is just a temporary arrangement." Temperance's eyes sparkled. "Is that the story? How quaint. Tell me, Miss Ashford, do you actually believe that? Or is that simply what you tell yourself to sleep at night?" Before Seren could respond, dinner concluded, and the party adjourned to the music room. Temperance disappeared into the crowd with a wink, leaving Seren to navigate alone. She found a quiet corner near a window, watching the room arrange itself into the familiar patterns of society. Clusters of conversation, alliances forming and dissolving, The endless dance of power and perception, which is entirely accurate. Never apologize for your circumstances, and never let them see that their opinions affect you. You make it sound easy. It gets easier. His hand brushed hers, so briefly she might have imagined it. You're stronger than you realize, Seren. I saw that the first moment you looked at me with those furious eyes and demanded to know why I'd trapped you. The use of her first name sent warmth cascading through her chest. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm constantly one wrong word away from disaster. Everyone feels that way. The difference is whether you let it paralyze you or use it to stay vigilant. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. Lady Venetia is approaching from the left, and she looks murderous. Time to perform. And then his hand was at her waist, turning her gently toward the room, and Lady Venetia was indeed cutting through the crowd with the focused determination of a woman preparing to wage war. Your Grace. Venetia's smile glittered like broken glass. I haven't had a chance to properly welcome Miss Ashford to London. Such a charming story, becoming friends with Lady Marin at a lending library. It was a memorable meeting, Seren said evenly. I imagine. Though I must say, I'm not familiar with the Ashford family. What part of the country did you say you were from? I didn't say. Something flickered in Venetia's eyes, irritation perhaps, at being so obviously deflected. How mysterious. Though I suppose mystery has its own appeal, doesn't it? For a time, at least. She turned her attention to Caius. Your Grace, your grandmother mentioned you'd be attending the Thornbury races this weekend. I do hope you'll save me a dance at the evening celebration. I'm afraid my card is already full. The lie was smooth as silk. Venetia's smile became fixed. Of course. Perhaps another time. She glanced at Serene. It was lovely to meet you properly, Miss Ashford. I'm sure we'll be seeing quite a lot of each other. The words sounded like a promise, or a threat. When Venetia finally withdrew, Seren released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. She's going to be a problem, Caius said quietly. I gathered that. I'll handle it. How? He didn't answer, but something in his expression suggested the answer wouldn't be pleasant for Lady Venetia Harcourt. The carriage ride home was quiet. Marin had claimed exhaustion and fallen asleep against the window, leaving Seren and Caius in strangely intimate silence. You did well tonight, he said finally. I survived. That's different from doing well. In society, they're often the same thing. He paused. Temperance Birchwood sought you out at dinner. What did she want? To warn me about Lady Venetia, and to imply that our arrangement isn't as convincing as we believe. Shadows crossed his features. Temperance is observant. Too observant sometimes. What exactly did she say? That temporary arrangements have a way of becoming permanent, whether we intend them to or not. A hush settled between them, weighted with implications neither seemed willing to examine. The carriage drew up before Ashworth House, and servants materialized to assist them. Seren climbed the stairs to her rose guest suite, Nell trailing behind with gentle offers of tea and assistance. But when the door closed and the room fell silent, she found herself standing at the window, staring out at the darkened gardens. Temperance was right. This didn't feel temporary anymore. Somewhere in the past week, between dress fittings and dinner parties and conversations that cut too close to truth, something had transformed. She looked forward to seeing Caius at meals. She noticed when he entered a room, when he left it. She caught herself wondering what he was thinking, what he was feeling behind that careful mask. It was dangerous. It was foolish. It was exactly what she'd promised herself wouldn't happen. And yet, a knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it expecting Nell with forgotten tea. Instead, she found Caius. He stood in the hallway, still in his evening clothes, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I apologize for the late hour, he said. I wanted to give you this. He held out a small box, wrapped in dark blue paper. Seren took it carefully, conscious of his eyes watching her every move. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a delicate pendant, a single amber stone, the exact color of the dress she'd worn to the Hatherley ball, set in gold. "It's not valuable," Caius said quickly, as if anticipating objection. "Amber and gold. Simple materials. But the color reminded me of how you looked that first night, when you walked into the ballroom and everything changed." Serene's throat tightened. "I can't accept this. It's not a proposal. It's not even a courtship gift." His voice was rough. "It's simply, I wanted you to have something that was yours. Something you didn't have to give back when this ends. Something you didn't have to give back." The word struck her with unexpected force. "Why?" she managed. "Because you matter." He stepped back, creating careful distance between them. "Because whatever happens after this arrangement concludes, I want you to know that you mattered. To Marin, to this house, to me." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the doorway with an amber pendant and a heart that suddenly felt too large for her chest. She closed the door and sat on the edge of her bed, turning the pendant over in her hands. The amber caught the candlelight like captured fire, like the beginning of something, or the end. She couldn't tell which anymore. The days that followed established a rhythm Serene hadn't expected. Morning rides with Marin, who turned out to be an excellent instructor with infinite patience. Afternoon calls, where she practiced the art of saying nothing while appearing to say everything. Evening events, dinners, musicals, card parties, where she and Caius performed their roles with increasing convincingness. Society began to accept the story they'd constructed. Miss Serene Ashford, a friend of Lady Marin's from the country, respectable if unremarkable family, clearly charming enough to have captured the Duke's attention. The whispers continued, but they became less hostile, more curious. And through it all, she saw pieces of Caius she suspected he didn't show anyone else. She saw him in the library at midnight, surrounded by papers, his mask stripped away by exhaustion. She saw him laughing, actually laughing, at one of Marin's ridiculous observations during breakfast. She saw him pause in the garden, staring at a particular rosebush with grief so raw it made her chest ache. "That was Mother's favorite," Marin explained one morning, catching Saren watching him through the window. "She planted it herself the summer before I was born. Father used to bring her roses from it every week until the day he died. He loved her very much. More than anything. That's what Grandmother doesn't understand. She thinks Caius should marry sensibly, the way she did. But he saw what Father had with Mother. He knows what's possible." Marin's voice softened. "He won't settle for less. Even if that means never marrying at all. Even then." Marin looked at her with knowing eyes. "Unless, of course, he finds someone who makes settling unnecessary." Serene changed the subject quickly, but the implication lingered. That evening, they attended the Hartwell musical, a smaller gathering, more intimate, more dangerous. The performers were excellent, but Serene couldn't focus on the music. She was too aware of Caius beside her, his shoulder nearly touching hers, his breath stirring the air between them. During the interval, he guided her to a quiet alcove behind a potted palm. "You're distracted tonight." "I'm always distracted at these events." "No, this is different." His eyes searched her face. "What's wrong?" "Everything," she wanted to say. "Everything is wrong, because nothing is wrong. Because I'm starting to want things I can't have. Because when you look at me like that, I forget this is supposed to be temporary." "I spoke with my brother today," she said instead. "A letter arrived. Theo has been asking questions about Phineas Locke." His posture went rigid. "What kind of questions?" He discovered that Locke disappeared from London the night of the Hatherley ball. No one knows where he went. Theo's worried. He feels responsible for introducing us. He should feel responsible. His carelessness put you in danger. He was trying to help. He was chasing schemes without considering consequences. That's not help, Seren. That's recklessness disguised as good intentions. The words hit harder than they should have, perhaps because they echoed her own frustrations with Theo, perhaps because Caius was right. I've sent my own people to find Locke, he continued. When they do, I'll ensure he can never manipulate anyone else the way he manipulated you. And then what? What do you mean? When Locke is found, when the season ends, when your grandmother eventually accepts that you won't marry Lady Venetia, what happens to us? The question hung between them, charged with everything they'd been avoiding. Caius was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I don't know. I've never been good at imagining futures. He stepped closer, near enough that she could see the pulse beating at his throat. But I know I don't want this to end. I know that when I think about the season concluding and you returning to your family, something in my chest feels like breaking. She forgot how to breathe. Caius, I'm not asking for answers. I know this isn't fair to you. Making declarations when our situations are so unequal, when you depend on my protection. His hands clenched at his sides, as if physically restraining himself. But you asked what happens next, and I won't lie to you. What happens next is that I try to convince you this doesn't have to end. That we could be. Music swelled from the performance room, cutting him off. Someone called his name from across the corridor. The moment shattered. We should return, Seren said, her voice steadier than her heart. Seren, please. I need time to think. I don't know what to feel. He nodded slowly, pain flickering beneath his careful mask. They returned to their seats without touching, without speaking. The music washed over them, beautiful and meaningless. And Seren sat with her hands clasped in her lap, her pulse thrumming wildly, trying to understand how a temporary arrangement had become something neither of them knew how to end. That night, alone in her room, she clasped the amber pendant around her neck and stared at her reflection. The woman looking back wasn't the desperate, displaced creature who had stumbled into this arrangement a week ago. This woman wore confidence like a gown. This woman held her own against society matrons and jealous rivals. This woman had somehow, impossibly, made a duke fall for her. But falling wasn't the same as landing safely, and Seren still didn't know if she could survive the crash. The Thornberry Ball was the event of the season. Everyone said so. The invitations were coveted, the guest list exclusive, the decorations rumored to cost more than the annual income of a small village. Lord and Lady Thornberry opened their estate only once a year, and being seen there meant something. Being absent meant more. Seren stood before the mirror in her rose guest suite, barely recognizing the woman staring back. The gown was midnight blue, so dark it appeared black until the light caught it, revealing depths of color like the sky just before dawn. Silver embroidery traced constellations across the bodice and down the flowing skirt. Not random patterns, but actual stars, mapped with astronomical precision. Madame Fontaine outdid herself, Marin breathed from the doorway. You look like the night sky given form. I look like I'm trying too hard. You look like someone Lady Venetia should be terrified of. Marin crossed the room, adjusting a curl that had escaped its pin. Which, incidentally, she is. I heard from Temperance that Venetia has changed her gown 3 times, trying to outshine whatever you might wear tonight. That's absurd. She doesn't even know what I'm wearing. Exactly. The uncertainty is destroying her. Marin's smile was edged with satisfaction. Now come on. Caius has been pacing the entrance hall for 20 minutes, and grandmother is threatening to leave without us. The carriage ride to Thornberry Manor was tense with anticipation. The dowager sat in disapproving silence, her silver gaze occasionally flicking to Seren, as if reassessing her potential. Marin chattered about the guest list. Who would attend? Who would avoid whom? which alliances had changed since last season. And Caius watched Seren with an intensity that made her skin warm despite the evening chill. "The first dance will be a waltz," he said, as they approached the manor's glowing windows. "You'll dance it with me." Is that a request or a command? It's a statement of fact. His voice dropped, meant only for her. After tonight, no one will question whether our association is real. The words sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with temperature. Thornbury Manor blazed with 1,000 candles. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across marble floors. Hothouse flowers perfumed the air with impossible sweetness. And everywhere were the watching eyes of society's elite. Serene felt those eyes tracking her the moment she entered on Caius's arm. The whispers began immediately, a susurrus of speculation that followed them through the receiving line, past the clusters of conversation, toward the edge of the dance floor, where couples were assembling for the opening waltz. "They're staring," Serene murmured. "Let them." Caius turned to face her, offering his hand with formal precision. "Dance with me." The orchestra struck the opening notes, and then they were moving. Seren had practiced waltzing with Marin's dancing master until her feet ached, and her dreams were filled with counts of 3. But nothing had prepared her for this. For Caius's hand at her waist, his fingers interlaced with hers, the way he guided her through the crowd, as if they were the only 2 people in the room. "You're counting again," he said softly. "I'm trying not to embarrass you. You couldn't embarrass me if you tried." His grip tightened almost imperceptibly. "Stop thinking about the steps. Look at me." She raised her eyes to his. The rest of the room dissolved. There was only Caius, the line of his jaw, the intensity in his blue gaze, the ghost of a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. He looked at her like she was extraordinary, like she was the answer to a question he'd been afraid to ask. "Better," he murmured. "Much better." The waltz carried them across the floor, turn after turn, until Seren forgot to be nervous. She forgot the watching eyes, the whispered speculation, and the elaborate performance they were supposed to be staging. She forgot everything except the warmth of his hand, and the steadiness of his lead, and the feeling that somehow, impossibly, she had found exactly where she belonged. The music ended. They stood at the center of the dance floor, breathing hard, neither moving to separate. "Seren," Caius said, his voice rough. "Your Grace." Lady Venetia's voice cut through the moment like a blade through silk. "How fortunate that the waltz has concluded. I believe you promised me the next dance." She stood beside them in a gown of ice-white satin, diamonds blazing at her throat, her smile brittle enough to shatter. Caius's face went rigid. "I made no such promise. Perhaps not explicitly, but your grandmother assured me you would be delighted to partner with me this evening." Venetia's gaze flicked to Seren. "Unless, of course, you intend to monopolize Miss Ashford's time entirely. That would seem rather possessive." The word landed with calculated precision. "I'm sure Miss Ashford can spare me for one dance." Venetia extended her hand, a clear challenge. "Unless she's afraid of what might happen without her supervision?" Serene's blood heated. "I'm not afraid of anything, Lady Venetia." "How refreshing. Then you won't mind if I borrow the Duke for a few minutes." Before anyone could object, Venetia had taken Caius's arm, steering him toward the dance floor with the practiced expertise of a woman who had been claiming powerful men since her debut. Seren watched them go, something cold settling in her chest. "Don't let her rattle you." Temperance appeared at her elbow, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "She's performing for an audience. He'll escape as quickly as he can." I wasn't rattled. "No? Then why do you look like you want to throw something?" Seren accepted the champagne, taking a long swallow that was probably inappropriate. "Because I'm tired of being treated like a placeholder, like I'm just keeping his seat warm until someone more suitable comes along." "And are you?" A placeholder, I mean. The question struck deeper than it should have, because the honest answer, the one Seren barely admitted to herself, was that she didn't know anymore. What had started as an arrangement of convenience had become something else entirely. Something that made her pulse race when Caius entered a room. Something that made her dream of futures she had no right to imagine. "I don't know what I am," she said finally. "Then perhaps it's time to find out." Temperance nodded toward the terrace doors. Fresh air helps with clarity, and it removes you from Venetia's sight, which is always a bonus. The terrace was quieter than the ballroom, though couples still strolled along the torchlit paths, and laughter drifted from shadowed alcoves. Seren found an empty bench near a stone fountain, and sat, the midnight gown pooling around her like spilled ink. The stars above were the same ones embroidered on her bodice. Madame Fontaine's astronomical precision suddenly made sense. "May I join you?" She turned to find a man she didn't recognize. Handsome, dark-haired, dressed in evening clothes that fit too perfectly to be anything but expensive. "I'm afraid I don't. We haven't met." He settled onto the bench beside her without waiting for permission. "But I feel as though I know you, Miss Ashford. Your brother has told me so much about you." Dread pooled in her stomach. "You know Theo?" "We're business associates." The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "My name is Phineas Locke." She was on her feet instantly, her chest constricting with fear. "Stay away from me." "That would be difficult. We have so much to discuss." Locke remained seated, perfectly relaxed, as if her terror was of no consequence. "The dress you're wearing, for instance. Madame Fontaine's work is always exceptional, isn't it? I wonder if the Duke knows how much he's spending to costume his little distraction." "I'm not his distraction." "Aren't you?" Locke's voice dripped with false sympathy. "Poor Miss Ashford. You've been playing pretend so long you've forgotten the truth. You're a pawn, my dear. A tool to keep Lady Venetia at bay while Ashworth avoids his responsibilities. When the season ends, you'll be discarded like the temporary amusement you are." "You don't know anything about us." "I know everything." He stood slowly, moving closer despite her retreat. "I know the Duke has been investigating me since the Hatherley ball. I know his people have been asking questions in places they shouldn't. And I know that if he continues to interfere with my business, there will be consequences. Is that a threat?" "It's a prediction." Locke's smile widened. "Tell His Grace that I'll be watching. Tell him that the girl he's using as a shield has family, a brother who makes unwise deals, parents who can't afford scandal. It would be a shame if his little game brought ruin to people who've already suffered enough." Before Seren could respond, Locke melted back into the shadows, leaving her trembling on the terrace, with her pulse roaring in her ears. She found Caius in the card room, extracting himself from a conversation with Lord Harrington about horse breeding. One look at her face and his expression transformed from polite boredom to fierce concern. "What happened?" "Not here." She gripped his arm, aware that they were being watched. "Please, I need to tell you something." He led her through a series of corridors until they found an empty sitting room, its fireplace cold, its furniture draped in protective cloths. The moment the door closed, Seren's composure cracked. "Phineas Locke is here. He found me on the terrace. He knows you've been investigating him, and he threatened my family." Caius went very still. "Tell me exactly what he said." She repeated the conversation as precisely as she could, watching his countenance grow grave with each word. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. "I should have anticipated this," he said finally. "Locke is more connected than I realized. More dangerous. What do? We leave. Tonight. I'll make excuses. An urgent matter at the estate. Anything plausible." He took her hands, his grip fierce. "I won't let him hurt you, Seren. Whatever it takes. It's not me I'm worried about. If he goes after Theo, If he ruins my parents, I'll protect them, all of them." His eyes held hers with burning intensity. "Do you trust me?" The question shouldn't have been complicated, but standing there in the darkened room, her hands in his, everything felt complicated. "Yes," she whispered. "I trust you." Something transformed in his expression. Relief, perhaps, or something deeper. "Then trust this. Whatever Locke is planning, we'll face it together. You're not alone anymore." The words wrapped around her heart and squeezed. "Together," she repeated. They returned to the ballroom separately, as Caius had suggested. Less conspicuous, less likely to spark rumors of secret rendezvous. But Seren felt the distance between them like a physical ache. She found Marin near the refreshment tables, explaining some scandalous gossip to a group of young ladies who hung on her every word. "There you are," Marin detached herself immediately. "I've been looking everywhere. Grandmother is asking for you." "For me? Why?" "I don't know," but she looked even more terrifying than usual. Marin's face was pale. "She's in the blue salon. You should hurry." The blue salon was smaller than the main ballroom, designed for private conversations. The Dowager Duchess sat alone near the window, her expression carved from marble. "Close the door, Miss Ashford." Seren obeyed, her insides twisting. "I've just had a very interesting conversation with Lady Harcourt, Venetia's mother." The Dowager's voice was flat, controlled. "She informed me that her daughter observed you on the terrace this evening, engaged in what appeared to be an intimate conversation with a man who was not my grandson. That's not. She also informed me that this man was Phineas Locke, the same Phineas Locke who orchestrated your introduction to this family, the same Phineas Locke my grandson has been hunting for weeks." The Dowager's eyes glittered dangerously. "Would you care to explain why you're having secret meetings with the very person who supposedly manipulated you?" "I wasn't having a meeting. He approached me without warning. He threatened me. How convenient." The Dowager rose. "You can't do this. I am the Dowager Duchess of Ashworth. I can do whatever I please." The door opened. "Enjoy the remainder of the evening, Miss Ashford. It will be your last in our circles." She was gone. Seren stood alone in the blue salon, the weight of everything she'd built crashing down around her. It was over. Just like that. Over. She didn't tell Caius. She couldn't. Not there, not surrounded by 1,000 watching eyes. Not when every word they spoke would be analyzed and dissected by people who wanted nothing more than their downfall. She plastered on a smile, claimed exhaustion, and endured the carriage ride home with carefully constructed silence. Marin watched her with worried eyes, but didn't press. Caius watched her with something more complicated, concern edged with frustration, as if he could sense her withdrawal and didn't understand its source. When they reached Ashworth House, Seren excused herself immediately. "I'll see you in the morning," she said, the words hollow even to her own ears. "Seren." Caius caught her arm before she could flee up the stairs. "Something's wrong. Tell me." "I'm just tired." "You're lying." The bluntness should have stung. Instead, it almost broke her. "Please," she whispered. "Just let me go. Tonight. We'll talk tomorrow." His teeth clenched, but he released her arm. She climbed the stairs without looking back. In her room, Nell waited with tea and gentle efficiency. Seren changed into her nightclothes mechanically, allowed her hair to be brushed and braided, answered questions with monosyllables, until even Nell's patience was exhausted. "You should rest, miss. Whatever's troubling you will seem clearer in the morning." But Seren knew that wasn't true. The morning would bring departure, disgrace, the end of everything she'd been foolish enough to hope for. She sat by the window until the candles burned low, watching the garden below transform into a silver dream beneath the moon. Somewhere in this house, Caius was probably pacing his study, trying to understand what had changed. Somewhere, Marin was lying awake, wondering the same thing. And tomorrow, Seren would leave them both. A knock at the door made her breath stop. She knew before she opened it who would be standing there. "You didn't think I'd let you disappear without an explanation," Caius said. His cravat was loosened, his jacket discarded, his hair disordered, as if he'd been running his hands through it for hours. "Tell me what happened with my grandmother. How did you— Marin saw you go to the Blue Salon. She heard raised voices." He stepped inside without waiting for invitation. "What did she say to you?" "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." He closed the door behind him, his presence filling the room. "Everything about you matters to me." The words cracked something open in Seren's chest. "She's sending me away." The confession came out raw, painful. "Tomorrow morning. She thinks I'm still working with Locke, that the conversation on the terrace was proof I've been manipulating you from the beginning." His face clouded. "That's absurd." "Lady Venetia saw us together. She told her mother, who told your grandmother." Seren laughed bitterly. A perfect chain of destruction. Venetia must be celebrating. "I'll speak to grandmother. I'll explain." "Explain what? That you trust me?" Seren shook her head. "She doesn't trust me, Caius. She never has. She's been waiting for proof that I'm exactly what she feared. A schemer, a manipulator, someone using you for her own ends." "That's not what you are." "How do you know?" The question tore out of her, raw with desperation. "You've known me for weeks. Weeks. How can you possibly know what I am, or what I'm capable of?" Caius crossed the room in 3 strides. His hands cupped her face, tilting it up until she had no choice but to meet his eyes. "I know," he said, his voice rough. "Because I've been dead for 8 months, walking through rooms without seeing them, talking to people without hearing them, existing without actually living. And then you appeared in that ridiculous amber dress, terrified and furious, and so completely alive. And something in me woke up. Caius, I know because when you laugh, I want to be the one who caused it. I know because when you're hurting, I feel it in my chest, like my own pain. I know because the thought of you leaving, of never seeing you again, makes me want to tear this house down to its foundations." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "That's not— We agreed this was temporary." "I don't care what we agreed." His thumbs brushed the tears from her skin. "I don't care about arrangements or propriety or what my grandmother thinks. I care about you. Only you. And I'm not letting her send you away. You can't stop her. Watch me." And then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was nothing like she'd imagined. Not gentle, not hesitant, not the careful exploration of 2 people testing boundaries. It was fire. It was desperation. It was every word they'd been afraid to say, every look they'd pretended not to notice, every moment they'd spent in the same room aching to close the distance between them. Seren's hands found his shoulders, his hair, pulling him closer when she should have been pushing him away. His arms wrapped around her waist, lifting her onto her toes, holding her against him like she might disappear if he let go. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. "Tell me this is wrong, and I'll walk away right now." "I can't, because it's not wrong, because I don't want you to stop." She pressed her palm to his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath her touch. "I don't want any of this to stop, and that terrifies me." "Why?" "Because I know how it ends." Her voice cracked. "You're a duke. I'm nobody. Eventually, the season will end. Or your grandmother will win. Or society will become too much. And you'll realize that I'm not worth the fight. You're worth everything. You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow. I'll say it next month and next year, and for the rest of my life if you'll let me." He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "Seren, I'm not offering you an arrangement anymore. I'm not asking you to perform a role. I'm asking you to stay. really stay. As something more than a guest. As something more than a distraction. As what then? The question hung between them, weighted with implications that made her head spin. As the woman I love, Kaya said. The world stopped. You can't, she started. I can. I do. His gaze never wavered. I love you, Saren Ashford. I love your courage and your temper, and the way you refuse to be intimidated by anyone, including me. I love that you negotiate like a merchant and think like a strategist and kiss like you're drowning and I'm air. A sound escaped her, half laugh, half sob. This is madness. Probably. But it's also the truest thing I've ever felt. He took her hands, pressing kisses to her knuckles. I know I'm asking too much. I know the obstacles seem insurmountable. But I'm telling you that I will fight my grandmother, fight society, and fight anyone who tries to separate us. The only thing I can't fight is you. So tell me what you want. What did she want? For so long, Saren's wants had been simple. Security, stability, survival. A position that would let her support her family. A life free from the constant fear of losing everything. But standing here in this beautiful room that wasn't hers, with this impossible man holding her hands like she was precious, she wanted more. She wanted mornings across the breakfast table. She wanted arguments in the library and laughter in the garden. She wanted to watch him emerge from his grief, slowly, beautifully, like a flower forcing its way through frozen ground. She wanted him. I want to stay, she whispered. I want to believe this is real. It's real. He kissed her again, softer this time, a promise. I'll make you believe it. They stood there until the candles guttered, until the moon moved past the window, until Saren's racing thoughts finally slowed to something approaching peace. Your grandmother, she said eventually. She won't accept this. She'll have to. And Locke? He threatened my family. He's not going to stop just because Locke will be handled. Caius's expression hardened. I've been too passive, waiting for information, playing defensive. That changes now. By the end of the week, Phineas Locke will no longer be a threat to you or anyone else. How? Trust me. She did. God help her, she did. What happens tomorrow? She asked. When your grandmother expects me to leave? Tomorrow, we tell her together. We explain that the arrangement has changed, that this is no longer about convenience or strategy, that I've made my choice, and that choice is you. She'll be furious. She'll adapt. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture achingly tender. Grandmother respects strength. When she sees that we're united, that neither of us will back down, she'll find a way to accept it. She has no other option. Saren wasn't as certain. Miss Ashford. A footman appeared at her door. His Grace requests your presence in the morning room. The Dowager Duchess is also in attendance. The moment had arrived. She descended the stairs on legs that wanted to tremble and refused to let them. The morning room was bright with sunshine that felt like a mockery. Caius stood by the window, tension visible in every line of his body. The Dowager sat in her usual chair, her expression carved from marble. And Marin, wonderful, loyal Marin, hovered near the door, her face pale with anxiety. Close the door, Miss Ashford. The Dowager's voice was ice. We have matters to discuss. Grandmother, Caius started. I was speaking to Miss Ashford. The Dowager didn't take her eyes from Saren. I believe I made myself clear last evening. Your presence in this house is no longer welcome. Have you made arrangements for your departure? She's not leaving. Caius moved to stand beside Saren, his hand finding hers. I've made my decision. Your decision. The Dowager's laugh was like breaking glass. Your decision is to throw away your reputation, your family's legacy, everything your father worked for, all for a woman you've known less than a month? Yes. The single word fell like a stone into water. You've lost your mind, the Dowager said flatly. The grief has addled your judgment. This woman has clearly manipulated. This woman has done nothing but endure your scrutiny with grace, navigate impossible situations with courage, and tell me truths I needed to hear when everyone else was too afraid to speak. Caius's voice hardened. You don't know her, grandmother. You've never tried to know her. You've only tried to find reasons to dismiss her. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From happiness? From feeling something real for the first time since Father died. He released Seren's hand, only to step toward his grandmother, his posture confrontational. You say you want me to live again. Well, Seren makes me want to live. She makes me want to wake up in the morning and face whatever the day brings. Can Lady Venetia say the same? The Dowager's face reddened. Lady Venetia is appropriate. Lady Venetia is a fortune hunter dressed in sapphires. She looks at me like I'm a title to be acquired, not a person to be loved. And you know it. You've always known it. But you were willing to sacrifice my happiness because she checked the right boxes. That is not. It is. It's exactly what you've been doing. Caius's voice dropped to something raw. I understand duty, grandmother. I've lived my entire life for duty. But Father married for love, and he never regretted it. Not for one single day. That's what I want. That's what I deserve. And Seren is who I choose. No one spoke for an endless moment. The Dowager looked at Caius for a long moment, really looked at him, as if seeing something she'd missed before. Then her gaze moved to Seren. Do you love him? The question was blunt, demanding. Yes, Seren didn't hesitate. I love him. I didn't mean to. I tried not to. But yes, I love him. And you understand what you're asking for? The scrutiny you'll face, the enemies you'll make, the constant judgment of people who will never accept you. I understand. You're willing to fight for him? To stand beside him when society turns hostile and scandals threaten and everything seems impossible? I've been fighting my whole life, Seren said quietly. I know how to endure impossible things. The difference is that now I'd be fighting for something worth winning. The Dowager was silent for an endless moment. Then she rose, her movements slow, her face difficult to read. Lady Venetia will be livid. Lady Venetia can be as livid as she pleases. Society will talk. They always do. This changes nothing about my concerns regarding Phineas Locke. He's still a threat, and Miss Ashford's connection to him is not what you assumed. Caius's voice firmed. Locke targeted her, used her. She's as much his victim as anyone, and I will deal with Locke. Permanently. The Dowager's eyes narrowed. How? I have resources you don't know about, grandmother. Trust that I know what I'm doing. Something flickered across the Dowager's face. Surprise, perhaps, or reassessment. Whatever she saw in her grandson's expression made her pause. Very well, she said finally. I will not support this publicly. Not yet. But I will not oppose it either. If you can convince society that this match is acceptable, if you can navigate the scandal without destroying our family's reputation, I will acknowledge Miss Ashford as a potential match. Relief crashed through Serene so intensely she nearly staggered. Grandmother, Caius started. Don't thank me yet. You've chosen an extraordinarily difficult path. I still believe you're making a mistake. The Dowager moved toward the door. But you're my grandson, and if this is truly what you want, I won't be the one to stop you. She was gone. Marin burst from her corner, throwing her arms around Seren. That was terrifying and wonderful, and I thought grandmother was going to spontaneously combust at least 3 times. Marin, Caius said warningly. Don't Marin me. I've been holding my breath for an hour. But she released Seren with a brilliant smile. This calls for celebration. I'm going to find breakfast pastries and possibly champagne. She swept from the room, leaving Caius and Seren alone. "That went better than expected," he said. Seren laughed weakly. "Did it?" I couldn't tell. My thoughts were too loud. He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. She went willingly, pressing her face against his chest, breathing in the scent of cedar and warmth and safety. "We did it," he murmured against her hair. "We actually did it. We did something. I'm not sure what. We told the truth. We fought for what we wanted." He tilted her face up, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "That's everything." They stayed there, wrapped in each other, until a footman appeared with news that made the morning's victory taste like ashes. "Your Grace, a message has arrived. Urgent." Caius released Seren reluctantly, taking the sealed letter. His expression changed as he read, his face going dark, hardening, and becoming something she didn't recognize. "What is it?" "Locke." The word was clipped, furious. "He's made his move." "What kind of move?" Caius looked at her, and the devastation in his eyes made nausea wash over her. "He's released information to the papers about your family's debts, your father's failed business, your brother's involvement in his schemes." His jaw clenched. "It will be published tomorrow morning. By noon, everyone in London will know everything." The floor tilted beneath Seren's feet. "No. I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. I should have moved faster. I should have stopped him before. I have to go." The words came from somewhere outside herself. "I have to warn my family. They can't find out from a newspaper. They can't." "Seren, wait." But she was already moving, already running, already feeling everything she'd built crashing down around her. Locke had won, and she had no idea how to survive what came next. The carriage couldn't move fast enough. Seren sat rigid on the velvet seat, her hands clenched in her lap, watching London blur past the windows. Caius had insisted on accompanying her despite her protests, his presence beside her both comfort and complication. "We'll fix this," he said for the fourth time. "You can't fix this. The information is already out there. By tomorrow, I'll have spoken to every editor in London. I have influence, Seren. Let me use it." "Influence won't erase truth," her voice cracked. "Everything Locke is publishing is true. My father did fail. We are in debt. Theo did make deals with criminals. Those aren't lies that can be denied." His jaw tightened. "Then we'll control the narrative, frame it differently. Your father was a victim of dishonest partners. Your family has faced hardship with dignity. I was a fraud pretending to be something I'm not." Seren turned to face him. "That's what they'll say. That I manipulated my way into your household, deceived society, trapped a duke with feminine wiles. Your grandmother's worst fears confirmed in black and white." "My grandmother no longer believes those fears." "She'll have to. Everyone will." Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "This was always going to end, Caius. I just didn't expect it to end quite so publicly." He reached for her hand. She let him take it, drawing what comfort she could from the warmth of his grip. "Listen to me," he said, his voice low and fierce. "I don't care what the papers print. I don't care what society whispers. I told you last night that I love you, and I meant it. That doesn't change because of scandal." "It should." "It doesn't." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "We'll face this together. That's what I promised, and that's what I'll do." The carriage stopped before a modest townhouse in an unfashionable part of the city. Seren's childhood home, smaller and shabbier than she remembered, with paint peeling from the shutters and the front garden overgrown with neglect. Her mother opened the door before Seren could knock. "Sweetheart." The word broke something in Seren's chest. "I received your letter this morning. I've been watching the window for hours." "Mama." She fell into her mother's arms, the familiar scent of lavender and laundry soap overwhelming her composure completely. "I'm so sorry. I'm so terribly sorry. Hush now. Come inside. We'll sort everything out." The interior was exactly as Seren remembered. Worn furniture arranged with desperate dignity. Books stacked on every surface. Her father's chair positioned by the window, where he spent most days now, staring at nothing. He looked up when she entered. Something stirred in his eyes. Recognition? Pain. The ghost of the father he'd been before everything collapsed. "Serene." His voice was rougher than she remembered. "You look different." "Father." She crossed to kneel beside his chair, taking his weathered hands in her gloved ones. "I need to tell you something. Something that's going to be difficult to hear." "The papers." His voice was flat. "We already know." Seren's blood ran cold. "How?" "A man came this morning. Said he wanted to give us warning before the storm." Her mother's voice tightened. He seemed very pleased with himself. "Locke. The bastard had come here personally to twist the knife." Seren's mother sat down heavily, her hand pressed to her chest. Her father studied Caius with eyes that were clearer than Seren expected. "You're the Duke of Ashworth." "I am. And you want to marry my daughter, the daughter of a failed merchant, the sister of a boy who makes deals with criminals. I want to marry Seren, the woman who walked into a ballroom full of predators and refused to be devoured. The woman who negotiated with me as an equal and made me remember what it felt like to be alive." Caius's voice rang with conviction. "Her family's circumstances are irrelevant. Her character is everything." Pretty words. True words. Caius met her father's gaze without flinching. "I know I'm asking you to trust a stranger. I know my world has given you no reason to believe its promises. But I swear to you, on my father's memory, on everything I hold sacred, I will protect your daughter. I will honor her. I will spend the rest of my life proving worthy of her." The stillness stretched. Then, impossibly, Seren's father laughed. It was rusty, broken, the laugh of a man who'd forgotten how. "Well," he said, "at least you've got spine. That's something." "Richard," her mother murmured. "What?" "The boy's got conviction, more than most of those society peacocks." He looked at Seren. "Do you love him?" "Yes, father." "I do." "And you trust him? Truly trust him?" "With my life." Her father nodded slowly. "Then that's enough for me." His eyes returned to Caius. "But if you hurt her, if you discard her once the novelty wears off, I may be a broken old man, but I'll find a way to make you regret it." "Understood, sir." "Good. Now someone tell me what we're going to do about this Locke business." They spent the next hour planning. Caius outlined his resources: solicitors, investigators, connections in Parliament who owed him favors. He explained that Locke's activities extended beyond manipulation of innocent women. There were financial crimes, forgeries, schemes that touched some of London's most powerful families. "If we can expose him before the papers expose us," Caius said, "the narrative shifts. Your family becomes victims of a criminal conspiracy, not subjects of scandal." "Can you do it in time?" Seren asked. "I've had people working on this for weeks. The evidence is nearly complete. I just need to accelerate the timeline." He stood, determination hardening his features. "Stay here with your family. I'll return tomorrow with news." "Caius." He kissed her forehead, quick and fierce. "Trust me." Then he was gone. Seren spent the night in her childhood bedroom, smaller and colder than she remembered, staring at the ceiling and wondering if hope was wisdom or foolishness. Her mother brought tea at midnight. "You really love him," she said, settling on the edge of the narrow bed. "It's written all over your face." "Is that so obvious? To a mother?" "Yes." Her fingers brushed Seren's hair, the gesture achingly familiar. "He's different from what I expected. A duke. I imagined someone cold, distant, someone who would use you and discard you. He's not like that." "No," He's not. Her mother smiled softly. He looks at you the way your father used to look at me, before everything went wrong, like you're the center of something he didn't know was missing. Serene's throat tightened. What if it doesn't work? What if Locke wins and everything falls apart? Then we'll survive, the way we've always survived. Her mother's hand found hers. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think your Duke is going to move heaven and earth for you, and I think you're going to let him. Is that wrong? Letting someone fight for me? That's not weakness. And at the bottom of the article, a single line that made Serene's knees buckle. Evidence provided by the Office of His Grace, the Duke of Ashworth, whose own household was targeted by Mr. Locke's schemes. He'd done it. Caius had actually done it. A carriage arrived 20 minutes later. Not his usual vehicle, but something grander. The formal coach bearing the Ashworth crest, driven by liveried servants in full regalia. The door opened, and Caius stepped out. He looked exhausted, triumphant, utterly beautiful. "It's over," he said. "Locke is in custody. His confederates are being rounded up as we speak. The papers are printing retractions and corrections. Your family's reputation is not only intact, you're being celebrated as victims who helped bring a criminal to justice." Serene threw herself into his arms. He caught her, lifting her off her feet, burying his face in her hair. The Ashworth Ball was the event of the decade. Everyone said so. The invitations more coveted than royal summons, the preparations consuming the household for weeks, the guest list, including every family of consequence in London. The Dowager Duchess had personally overseen every detail, and while she claimed it was simply her duty as hostess, Serene suspected something more. She was making a statement. The Rose Guest Suite had become Serene's domain months ago, but tonight she barely recognized it. Madame Fontaine had outdone herself. The wedding gown hung in the corner, waiting for tomorrow's ceremony, while tonight's ball gown lay spread across the bed like a promise. It was amber silk, the same deep, honeyed gold as the dress she'd worn the night everything changed. But this gown was different. This one had been made specifically for her, every stitch placed with intention. The bodice was embroidered with tiny stars, the same constellation pattern as the midnight blue gown from the Thornbury Ball, the same astronomical precision, a love letter in thread and silk. "You're going to devastate him," Marin said from the doorway, "in the best possible way. That's the goal. I still can't believe this is actually happening. My brother, getting married, to someone I actually like." Marin crossed the room to embrace her. "You've changed him, you know. He laughs now. He comes to breakfast. He actually engages in conversation instead of grunting monosyllables at his ledgers. He still spends too much time with the ledgers, but now he emerges voluntarily. That's progress." Marin stepped back, her eyes suspiciously bright. "I'm gaining a sister, a real one, someone who understands what it's like to love difficult people." "Is he difficult?" I hadn't noticed. Marin laughed. "Liar." Nell appeared to help with final preparations, and Marin disappeared to make her own entrance. By the time Serene was ready, hair arranged, jewelry clasped, the amber pendant Caius had given her resting against her collarbone. The ball had been underway for an hour. She descended the main staircase alone. The ballroom fell silent. 500 faces turned toward her, society's elite, the people who had whispered about her, speculated about her, watched her every move with predatory attention. Tonight, they watched with something different. Admiration, respect, perhaps even envy. At the foot of the stairs, Caius waited. He looked at her the way he had that first night, when she'd entered the Hatherley ballroom in borrowed finery, and he'd asked the question that changed everything. "Who dressed you tonight?" he murmured as she reached him. The callback made her smile. "Madame Fontaine, at your request." Amber again. I thought it was fitting, a reminder of where we began. "I remember." He took her hand, pressing a kiss to her gloved fingers. I remember thinking you were the most terrified, furious, magnificent creature I'd ever seen. I remember wondering who you were, and how you'd appeared in my box, like something conjured from a dream. I was terrified. And now? Serene looked around the ballroom, at the glittering chandeliers, the swirling dancers, and the world that had once seemed so impossibly beyond her reach. Now I'm home. The words settled between them, simple and profound. The Dowager Duchess appeared at their side, her expression severe as always, but something softer lurking beneath. "The guests are waiting for the first dance," she said. "Try not to scandalize them too thoroughly." "We make no promises, grandmother." But as she turned away, Seren caught the ghost of a smile. The orchestra struck up a waltz. Caius led her to the center of the floor, and for a moment, the rest of the world disappeared. There was only the music, and his arms around her, and the certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. "I have a wedding present for you," he said as they turned. "We're not married yet." "Consider it an engagement present, then." His eyes sparkled. "I've settled all your family's debts. Your father's creditors have been paid. Your brother has been offered a legitimate position managing one of my subsidiary enterprises, one with no opportunity for schemes." Seren missed a step. "Caius. And I've purchased the house where you grew up. Your parents can stay there for the rest of their lives, properly maintained, without any fear of displacement." Tears blurred her vision. "That's too much. It's not nearly enough." He pulled her closer. "Propriety be damned. You gave me everything, Seren. You gave me reasons to wake up, to feel, to live. A house and some paid debts are nothing compared to what you've given me. I gave you arguments and complications. You gave me yourself." His voice dropped to a whisper. "That's worth more than all of it." The waltz ended. They stood in the center of the floor, surrounded by applause they barely heard. Tomorrow, they would marry in the chapel at Ashworth House, with family and close friends, and the Dowager Duchess presiding like a benevolent general. Tomorrow, Seren Ashford would become the Duchess of Ashworth, a title she'd never imagined, a life she'd never dared to dream. But tonight, there was dancing, and champagne, and the man she loved looking at her like she was the answer to every question he'd ever been afraid to ask. 6 months later, winter had settled over Ashworth House like a soft blanket, frost painting the windows, fires crackling in every hearth. Seren sat in the library, her library now, as much as it had ever been anyone's, reading a letter from her mother. "Dearest Seren, your father smiled today. A real smile, not the ghost we've grown accustomed to. He was reading in the garden. Yes, he goes to the garden now. And something in his book amused him. I watched from the window and cried for 10 minutes straight. This is your doing. All of it. All. The house, the security, the peace. You gave us our lives back. I hope you know how proud I am. Not because you married a duke, though that doesn't hurt, but because you became someone who fights for what she loves and never, ever gives up. Your father sends his regards. He's still terrible at writing letters, but he talks about you constantly. My daughter, the Duchess, he says, as if he still can't quite believe it. Come visit soon. Bring that husband of yours. I want to fatten him up. He's far too serious for someone so young. All my love. Mother Seren folded the letter, pressing it to her chest. Good news. Caius appeared in the doorway, looking rumpled and content, the way he always looked after emerging from his study these days. My father smiled. That is good news. He crossed to her, dropping a kiss on her forehead before settling into the chair beside her. I have some news as well. Oh? Phineas Locke was sentenced this morning. 15 years transportation. He'll be sailing for Australia within the month. Something that had been coiled tight in Seren's chest, finally released. It's really over. It's really over. Caius took her hand. He can't hurt you anymore. He can't hurt anyone." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire dance. "I've been thinking," Kaya said eventually. "Society would whisper, and obstacles would arise, and some days would be harder than others. But they would face them together, because that was what love meant. Not perfection, not endless ease, just two people choosing each other, over and over again, until choice became certainty, and certainty became home. Thank you for being here. You are the reason these stories exist, because you believe in love that chooses courage over convenience, in characters who fight for happiness despite the odds, in endings that feel earned and true. Your presence makes this space warm and welcoming, and I'm grateful for every moment you spend with these characters. Do you have a favorite line or scene? Your engagement helps me understand what moves you, what keeps you listening, and what kinds of stories to create next. Consider subscribing if you'd like more romances with emotional depth and genuine character growth. Thank you for being here. You make this community what it is.